Think about your body at the smallest scale. What shape are your cells? Maybe squishy cylinders or something else. It turns out tiny changes there can have huge consequences, sometimes good, sometimes leading to really debilitating problems.
Absolutely. And sickle cell disease is probably one of the most striking examples of this. A
Is it?
single cellular transformation with profound effects.
So that's our focus today. In this deep dive, we're going to unravel the story of sickle cell disease. We'll look at the basic biology, sure, but also its frankly surprising evolutionary roots, how it emerged as a defense against malaria.
And then we'll zoom right into a specific, powerful case study, the Tharu community in Nepal. We've pulled together information from, scientific papers, detailed community reports, even a really clear TED-Ed video to understand this interplay.
Yeah, it's this complex mix of genetics, history, and public health. Get ready for, I think, some real aha moments as we unpack it.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's start with the basics, the core mechanism. Remind us about red blood cells. What's their main job?
Right, so red blood cells are absolutely vital. Think of them as tiny delivery trucks. Their main job is carrying oxygen from your lungs out to all your tissues. Normally, they're these flexible, sort of donut-shaped discs.
Donut-shaped, yeah. And pliable, so they can squeeze through tiny blood vessels.
Exactly. Inside them, you have hemoglobin proteins floating independently. That flexibility is key. But in sickle cell disease, a single genetic mistake, just one tiny change in the blueprint, messes that all up.
A single glitch changes the hemoglobin structure.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the crucial moment, the point where everything changes, is after these mutated hemoglobin proteins drop off their oxygen. Instead of staying separate, they suddenly lock together. They form these long, rigid rods inside the cell.
Rigid rods. Okay, so that internal structure forces the whole cell to change shape.
It does. The cell gets deformed into that characteristic long, pointed sickle shape, like a crescent moon or, well, a farmer's sickle.
And that shape change isn't just cosmetic, is it? It has major consequences for how the blood flows.
Oh, absolutely major. Once they sickle, these cells become hard and sticky. They don't flow smoothly anymore. They snag on the walls of blood vessels. They pile up, sometimes blocking the vessel completely.
And a blockage means no oxygen gets through to the tissues downstream.
Exactly. That oxygen starvation is what causes many of the problems. It leads to this spectrum of symptoms, often starting really early, sometimes before a baby is even 1 year old.
What kind of symptoms are we talking about? I know pain's a big one.
Pain is definitely a hallmark. Repeated episodes of really intense stabbing pain in those oxygen-starved tissues. It could be in the hands, feet, the back, chest, abdomen. Depends where the blockage occurs.
But it goes beyond just pain episodes, right?
It does. These blockages can happen anywhere. If they occur in the spleen, which is crucial for immunity, it leaves patients very vulnerable to serious infections. If they pile up in the lungs, you get something called acute chest syndrome fever, difficulty breathing. It's dangerous.
Wow. And even eyes and brain.
Yes. Clogs in the tiny vessels near the eye can cause vision problems, even retinal detachment. And if the vessels supplying the brain get blocked, that can lead to a stroke, even in young children. It's devastating.
And on top of these crises, there's a constant underlying problem: anemia.
That's the other side of the coin. These sickled cells don't live nearly as long as healthy red blood cells, maybe 10 to 20 days, compared to about 4 months for a normal cell.
So the body is constantly short on red blood cells.
Constantly playing catch up. This chronic shortage is sickle cell anemia, and that causes persistent tiredness, fatigue, sometimes jaundice, that yellowish tint you might see in the eyes or skin.
It's a relentless condition. And just to be clear, this is inherited, right? It's in the genes.
Yes, absolutely. It's an inherited blood disorder. It all comes down to a defect in one specific gene, the beta-globin gene. This gene carries the instructions for making a part of hemoglobin. The defect leads to this abnormal form called hemoglobin S, or HbS.
And crucially, you need to inherit this faulty gene from both parents to get the disease itself.
That's right. One copy from each parent leads to sickle cell disease.
Okay, so we've painted a picture of a pretty serious inherited condition. But now for the twist, the paradox. This mutation, this HbS gene, it didn't start out as just a negative thing.
Not at all. And this is where the story gets incredibly interesting from an evolutionary perspective. Researchers traced its origins, and it popped up primarily in regions historically plagued by malaria.
Malaria. Okay, so connect the dots for us. How does a gene causing sickle cell relate to malaria?
Well, malaria is caused by a parasite spread by mosquitoes, And this parasite has a life cycle stage where it invades human red blood cells. It uses them as incubators, basically, to multiply and spread, often with lethal consequences.
So the parasite needs healthy red blood cells to thrive.
It does. But here's the kicker. The same structural changes in hemoglobin that cause red blood cells to sickle also make it harder for the malaria parasite to survive inside them.
So if someone inherits the faulty gene from just one parent,
They have what's called the sickle-cell trait, or scientifically HbAs. They have some abnormal hemoglobin, but also plenty of normal hemoglobin. Most of the red blood cells stay functional and flexible.
but that bit of abnormal hemoglobin is enough to hinder the malaria parasite.
Exactly. It creates a hostile environment for the parasite. It's not full-blown sickle cell disease, but it does offer significant protection against dying from malaria.
Wow. So in places where malaria was a major killer,
Having this sickle cell trait was a huge survival advantage. People with the trait were more likely to survive malaria infections, live longer, and have children. It's a textbook example of what biologists call balanced polymorphism or heterozygote advantage.
so the gene, even though potentially harmful, spread because of this protective effect. How does the protection actually work?
It seems to be multifaceted. First, the abnormal hemoglobin itself might directly impair the parasite's growth and development, especially when oxygen levels are lower in the body. Second, red blood cells infected with malaria, if they also carry the sickle trait, seem to sickle more easily. When they sickle, the spleen recognizes them as abnormal and removes them from circulation quickly.
So it clears out the infected cells before the parasite can really multiply.
Precisely. It's like an early warning system combined with rapid response. And there's some evidence it might also help the body build up its own natural immunity to malaria faster over time.
That's fascinating. And you mentioned earlier, sometimes other genetic factors are involved too, like in the Tharu community.
Yes, that's a really important point, especially for the Tharu. In some populations, other inherited blood disorders, like alpha thalassemia, are also common and provide some malaria resistance. Sometimes these factors work together, potentially offering even stronger protection. In some studies, the combinations seem to reduce the severity of malaria dramatically, maybe even tenfold.
So it's a complex genetic defense system that evolved. But it all hinges on that crucial difference, one copy versus two copies of the sickle cell gene.
Exactly. It's the ultimate double-edged sword. Inherit one copy, the trait, HbAs, you get protection against malaria. Inherit two copies, the disease, HBSS, you get severe, life-threatening sickle cell anemia. That's the paradox at its heart.
And that explains why today sickle cell disease is most common in people whose ancestors came from malaria endemic regions. Africa, the Mediterranean, Middle East, India, parts of the Americas.
Precisely. It's a direct genetic echo of where our ancestors faced that intense pressure from malaria.
Which brings us perfectly to the Tharu community in Nepal. You mentioned them. Tell us more about their specific situation.
Right, the Tharu. They're an indigenous group native to the Tarayi region, the lowlands of Nepal along the border with India. And historically, this area was what's called holoendemic for malaria, meaning malaria was incredibly intense year-round.
Dense forests, swamps, prime mosquito territory, I imagine. Deadly for outsiders.
Extremely deadly. For centuries, people moving down from the hills, non-Tharu groups, often couldn't survive there due to the severe malaria risk. But the Tharu did. They lived there, farmed there, thrived there.
Because they had developed this natural resistance over generations.
Exactly. Studies have actually quantified this. They showed the Tharu had almost 7 times lower rates of malaria infection compared to non-Tharu people living in the same areas. This resistance was their shield. It allowed them to control the fertile land, maintain their culture, largely in isolation.
So their unique genetics shaped their history and their relationship with the land. But then things changed. You mentioned a public health paradox unfolding.
Yes. This is where the story takes a sharp, and for the Tharu, devastating turn. In the mid-20th century, the Nepalese government launched major public health campaigns to wipe out malaria in the Terai, primarily using the insecticide DDT.
And they succeeded.
They were incredibly successful. Malaria was effectively eradicated from the region. From a public health perspective, it looked like an unambiguous victory. Those deadly swamps became safe, habitable, fertile land.
What did that mean for the Tharu, whose whole existence was intertwined with that malaria-ridden environment?
It was catastrophic, ironically. With the malaria threat gone, the floodgates opened. There was a massive migration of people from the hills down into the Terai Plains. These newcomers moved onto Tharu lands.
Leading to conflict, dispossession.
Widespread dispossession, yes. Exploitation, loss of land, increased poverty among the Tharu, their health outcomes declined, literacy rates dropped, their political influence weakened. The very genetic trait that had ensured their survival and protected their homeland for centuries suddenly became irrelevant as a protective shield, and instead, its other side, the risk of sickle cell disease, became a major public health crisis for them.
Wow. The advantage vanished, leaving only the burden. And the rates of the sickle cell gene among the Tharu are exceptionally high, aren't they?
Staggeringly high. Different studies show slightly different numbers, but they're all alarming. One screening in Dang district found over 9% of Tharu carried the HBS gene. A hospital study in Bardia found almost 15% of Tharu outpatients had either the trait or the disease.
15%.
And in some specific Tharu subgroups, like the Kanwar Tharu, estimates suggest the frequency of the HBS allele in the gene pool might be around 50%. Think about that.
50%. That's incredible.
And perhaps the most telling statistic. One nationwide study in Nepal found that something like 97 and 98% of all diagnosed sickle cell disease cases in the entire country were among the Tharu.
Despite them being only about 6% of Nepal's total population.
Exactly. It highlights just how concentrated this issue is within their community. It's not just a minor health concern, it's a defining health challenge for the Tharu people.
And there's a cultural factor that plays into this concentration too, right? The practice of endogamy.
Yes. Endogamy, the tradition of marrying within the community, has been common among the Tharu. Historically, this helped keep those beneficial malaria resistance genes within their population. But now, it dramatically increases the chances of two carriers people with the sickle cell trait marrying each other. And if both parents carry the trait, there's a 1 in 4 chance with each pregnancy that their child will inherit 2 copies of the gene and have sickle cell disease. So the cultural practice unintentionally helps perpetuate the high rates of the disease itself. It's a tragic, tangled web of genetics, history, and culture.
It really is. So let's talk about the human side of this. What are the day-to-day realities, the societal impacts for Tharu individuals and families living with sickle cell disease?
The impact is profound, touching almost every aspect of life. Economically, it's crippling for many. Poverty is already a challenge in many Tharu communities, and the costs associated with sickle cell are immense.
We're talking frequent doctor visits, tests, medications.
Repeated blood tests, sometimes frequent blood transfusions, pain medications, travel costs to get to hospitals, which are often far from their villages. It all adds up. The costs can be absolutely prohibitive, as one report put
Then
it.
families have to make impossible choices.
We heard accounts of families having to sell precious land or livestock just to cover medical bills. Even when there are government grants available around $800, maybe they're often not enough to cover long-term care.
And bureaucratic hurdles, too.
Yes, things like needing specific identity cards to access free care can be a barrier for people in remote areas or those who lack documentation. Just the cost of one key medication, hydroxyurea, which helps manage symptoms, can be around $13 a month. That might not sound like much to us, but for a low-income family there, it's a significant ongoing burden.
Beyond the finances, there's also the social aspect. Is there stigma attached to the disease?
Definitely. As with many inherited conditions, especially ones that aren't well understood in the community, there's often fear and misunderstanding surrounding sickle cell.
So people might hide it.
Yes, patients and families might conceal the illness. They fear rebuke and rejection. Sometimes there are lingering cultural beliefs that might frame it as a kind of supernatural punishment rather than a genetic condition.
Which could delay getting proper medical help.
Critically so. If families first consult traditional healers, Dami Jankri, instead of going to a clinic, valuable time can be lost. And sadly, that stigma can even follow patients into the healthcare system itself. People in severe pain seeking relief might be wrongly suspected of being drug addicts.
That's terrible. And it must affect major life events like marriage.
It absolutely can. We came across a story of a young Tharu woman whose engagement was put on hold because the groom's family demanded her relatives guarantee they'd cover any future medical costs related to her condition. It creates these enormous social pressures.
And the cycle continues as people with the trait, who might not even know they have it, marry within the community.
Exactly. Lack of awareness perpetuates the cycle. And then there's the psychological toll. Living with a chronic, painful illness. it takes a heavy toll.
Constant pain, fatigue, hospital visits.
Counselors working with patients report widespread anxiety, low self-confidence, and depression, especially among young people. Imagine being a child who frequently misses school because of pain crises, or an adult who can't work regularly. There was one particularly moving account from a mother of 4 children, all with sickle cell. She talked about countless hospital stays, one child needing intensive care, and 17 units of blood, the daily struggle with pain and fatigue. It's just relentless. It shapes every single day.
It really underscores that this isn't just a medical issue, it's deeply human, deeply societal.
Oh.
So given this complex and challenging picture, what's being done? Is there progress being made for the Tharu community?
There is, thankfully. There's been a growing recognition of sickle cell as a major health priority for the Tharu, especially since around 2014. The Nepalese government has officially flagged them as a high-risk group.
So concrete actions are being taken.
Yes. They're working to integrate sickle cell care into the regular public health system. That means training local doctors and nurses, developing national clinical guidelines. There's that one-time cash grant for diagnosed patients, which helps, even if it's not always enough.
And testing is becoming more available.
That's a key area of progress. Provincial health offices are funding free testing centers. Bardia Hospital, for example, now offers free hemoglobin electrophoresis. That's the key diagnostic test year-round. And there are plans for wire awareness and screening programs across all provinces, setting up camps in district hospitals and community centers.
That sounds promising. What about community-level efforts, NGOs, and the Tharu community itself?
They're playing a vital role. There's the Nepal Sickle-Cell Anemia Society, which is actually Tharu-led. They've been running awareness campaigns since 2015. International groups like students from the University of British Columbia working with a local NGO called Creating Possibilities Nepal have done amazing work.
Screening and education.
Yeah, over about a decade, they screened something like 6,100 Tharu individuals, identifying those with the disease, and crucially, the trait, finding nearly 55% had the trait in the groups they screened. Local NGOs are also partnering with businesses for awareness events.
And training people within the community.
Absolutely. Community volunteers are being trained to do door-to-door screening and provide basic counseling. Awareness is growing in the media and among policymakers. You see local health workers and NGOs holding regular meetings right there in Tharu villages. It's becoming much more of a community-driven response.
That's great to hear. And on the medical front, are there advances offering more hope beyond just managing the symptoms?
There are. For a long time, the main treatment has been hydroxyurea, which does help reduce the frequency of pain crises and complications, and it definitely increases life expectancy.
But it's not a cure.
No, not a cure. A bone marrow transplant can be curative, but it's a complex procedure, requires a suitable donor, and is often completely inaccessible or unaffordable for most patients, especially in Nepal.
So what else is on the horizon?
There's definitely excitement about newer medications that work in different ways. Some drugs aim to keep oxygen attached to the hemoglobin for longer, which helps prevent the cells from sickling in the first place. Others work on reducing the stickiness of the sickled cells so they're less likely to cause blockages.
And looking further ahead, gene therapy.
That's the big hope for the future. The advances in gene editing technologies like CRISPR have opened up the very real possibility of correcting the genetic defect in a patient's own stem cells. The idea is to enable those stem cells to produce normal, healthy hemoglobin again.
Essentially fixing the problem at its source.
Exactly. It's still complex and likely expensive initially, but it offers the potential for a true, widely topical cure down the line. It's a very active area of research.
So, pulling all this together, as we look towards the future for the Tharu community and others affected by sickle cell, what are the key things that need to happen? What are the main recommendations?
It really needs a comprehensive, multi-level approach. First and foremost, accessible screening. We need widespread, low-cost, ideally free genetic testing, especially in those high-prevalence districts. People need to know their status.
Knowledge is power, especially for family planning.
Absolutely. Which leads to the second point, genetics-based public health policy. Policies and programs need to be specifically tailored to the Tharu community's unique situation. Third, culturally sensitive health education. Campaigns have to actively combat the stigma, build trust, and encourage people to seek timely medical care using language and approaches that resonate locally.
And counseling.
Crucial. Genetic counseling and premarital counseling are essential to inform individuals about their carrier status, the risks involved, and family planning options. This is key to breaking that cycle of transmission.
Makes sense. What else?
We also have to address the underlying socioeconomic disparities. Initiatives aimed at reducing poverty and improving education levels among the Tharu will directly improve their ability to access healthcare and manage the condition.
It's all interconnected.
It really is. And finally, continued research. We still need more comprehensive studies on prevalence. We need to evaluate which community interventions are working best, and we need to dig deeper into the complex interactions between genetics, environment, and health outcomes for the Tharu.
It's a complex challenge requiring a sustained, holistic effort.
No doubt about it.
Well, what a journey we've taken today. From the intricate drama playing out inside a single red blood cell.
Through this incredible evolutionary saga of malaria resistance, this biological trade-off.
To the stark realities of the public health paradox faced by the Tharu people and their resilience in confronting it. We've really woven together the science, the history, the human impact.
It shows how these different threads are inseparable, really.
It does. And the Tharu story serves as such a powerful reminder, doesn't it? That progress, like malaria eradication, can have unforeseen consequences. That sometimes our own body's clever adaptations to past threats can become sources of vulnerability in a changed world.
It really makes you think. As we continue to alter our environments, conquer old diseases, what other evolutionary legacies, what hidden genetic stories might emerge as the public health challenges of tomorrow?
It really highlights the need for solutions that go beyond just the scientific or the medical. We need approaches that embrace the full human story in all its complexity, its history, its culture.
Well said. Addressing the whole picture, not just the biological mechanism.
Exactly. A lot to think about there.